First of all, a big thanks, big thanks to the 1MC Provo community. I really appreciate all of the help that Amy and Jason and Peyton have put in to making this work for us, and really appreciate the feedback from the community. So I wanted to go through what is working right now, and I would love to get your feedback on maybe helping me clarify or make my message more compelling. But let's see, I know everyone at this table just met Joseph, and tell me your name? Caesar. Okay, cool. And are you at RevRoad over here? What are you working on? Nice. Okay, excellent. Good. So any feedback you guys can give me would be great. Like I said, this and we're getting traction. And the other ask is if anyone in your network could use these services, we would really appreciate any referrals. So let me start by saying that Kereon Intelligence is named after this lighthouse on the west coast of France, and we do fractional data services. So it's this idea that's been going on for a long time with, for example, CFOs. There are fractional CFOs, fractional CMOs, and the idea is that the CFO can go to multiple companies and essentially consult for them. He can bring his experience and his leadership into these companies, but these companies don't have to pay for a full-time executive. And the CFO would also have a couple of bookkeepers that he has on his team that will help him. So all of these companies are getting this leadership and this experience and expertise, and they're not having to have all the CFO and his team on staff. Same idea, but what we're finding is so many companies are lacking that leadership and that expertise and that technical capability on the data side. So it's essentially this fractional CDO, a Chief Data Officer, who is also backed up by a really strong team that we have on board of data experts. And the idea is, don't try and build that in-house. It's super expensive to do that. Just use us on demand, project by project. Each project and each company, as far as data goes, is very customized. So don't try and build this team in-house. And companies can use us in one or both ways, either at that executive and strategy level, or also they can just pull as they need from our technical team. So here's a few things that I wanted to cover today. First is, what do we mean by AI and data technologies? It's kind of a buzzy word, and so let's make sure we're talking about the same thing on that. Why does a company need a data strategy? What are the benefits of a fractional data service? And I'll run through a few case studies as well. So here we have, in terms of sort of this umbrella of data and AI technologies, the base is big data. So it's how we manage and collect and store and clean all of the data that these companies are collecting or should be collecting, right? The next one is business intelligence. And you've probably never seen billboards from this company, but this is kind of where Domo would fit in. This idea of, let's analyze that data, let's visualize it so we can start to pull out insights from it. There's also a part of this that is, how do we use machine learning algorithms to help us predict what's going on, what's going to happen? And then there's also another step after that, which is prescriptive modeling. So it's the idea of, once we know what's going to happen based on our model, what should we be doing about that? And we can have models give us information on that as well. What should we be doing? Another piece of it is what's happening now in your company, and that involves hyper automation. So we'll go through and look at all the processes going on with your systems, with your employees. We'll find bottlenecks, and then let's automate those mundane human tasks that people are doing over and over, and possibly introducing mistakes in. So let's automate those. Oh, sorry. So maybe you could look at this and say, well, hey, we really only need 4 people, Landon. If we hired a big data expert, if we hired a hyper automation expert, maybe someone on the predictive side, another person for data analytics and business intelligence, 4 people, we bring those people on staff, and then we're covered, right? We can do whatever data projects we need to. So let me just really quickly show you some of the sub-disciplines in these, and then you'll kind of get an idea of, man, that's a lot. For example, there's no one person, no one big data expert who would know all of these other sub-disciplines. And so the idea is that Kereon, and this is kind of a spoiler alert here, but Kereon has a team of 18 people, technical people on our team. Each one of them have a PhD or a master's in one of these areas. And so we got it covered. So just think about this, a little more simplified version of what's going on in that data technology or AI umbrella. But just know that it would be prohibitively expensive for a company to try and build this in-house most of the time. So the idea is, why should we have a data strategy? Well, we have a company, and here's our executive team or our management team. We have people representing all of the departments in the company, HR, finance, operations, manufacturing, whatever it is. And they're all working within their divisions, within their departments, to do what? Increase profitability for the company. And depending on the department and the nature of the department, they'll have projects that are either increasing revenue or decreasing costs. If you don't have someone at that table with data expertise, you're missing out on a lot of horsepower and a lot of measurable ROI that you could have on a lot of these projects that this management team is trying to accomplish. So that's where Kereon comes in, again, fractionally. And we can look at all of these projects and say, hey, for example, sales and marketing, if you guys would start collecting XYZ data from your customers, then we could use that data and start predicting things such as, hey, when are these customers going to drop out? We could segment the customer population and say, hey, this particular segment, in month 3, they seem to drop out. 60% of this segment drops out, and we're losing customers. So maybe we can go in and say, let's look at what we can do to create touch points for those customers. We can automatically send out text or stay in touch with those customers in some way, and we'll figure that out. But how do we keep those customers for longer? That's an example. Another example is, hey, accounting department, let's take a look at your processes and your people, and let's try and automate out some of those tasks that people are doing over and over, and then allow those people to do kind of more creative work. So why would you use fractional? As I mentioned, it's that expense. It's trying to build in-house, or can we just sort of Uber in these data experts as needed, and then we don't have to bring them on staff, right? And again, there's 2 different levels that we're working on. If we have that Kereon executive there at the table, he can also act as a project manager, and on each one of these projects going on in the company, and say, okay, for this particular project, here's the areas where data technologies could add ROI, and I'm going to go over to my team and grab this person for 2 weeks and then this person for a month and bring them in, and then they go back and you're not having to pay for those folks full time. So again, if you're looking at all that and trying to build that in-house, that's really expensive. Don't do that. Just use us. I wanted to also give you an idea of when would a company want to engage a fractional CDO service. So in a startup phase, we've worked with companies when, especially it works well when their product and their or service is founded on technology. Here's an example. We're working with a startup right now who is helping studios kind of catch up to Netflix. So Netflix has a ton of data on all of us, right? And what we're watching and what they think we want to watch next. But none of the other studios have that kind of data, but they know they need to get into the streaming service. So we're helping this company help their clients, their clients who are the studios, we're helping them create that data infrastructure and be able to say, hey, in Ghana, here's what people are wanting to watch, and this is maybe what you should start to produce in terms of movies. In Singapore, it's different. There's 3 different languages, so let's look at the languages and what are each one of those language segments wanting to watch. So that's how we're helping that startup. Another startup that we've worked with is helping them as they're going out to get funding. We can act as their chief data officer. It looks transparent to the investors. It looks like this startup has that data expert on board, and we can help that startup show the investors, hey, there's a data roadmap here that as we grow, we already have integrated the collection and the cleaning and the analysis of data, so to help us on our growth path. This is kind of our sweet spot, of course, those companies between 10 million and 100 million, and somewhere in between there. And the idea here is these companies are large enough to be collecting, or should be collecting, all of the data that they need to make these data projects have a true ROI and really bring horsepower into the company. So we can help there. These companies are also big enough that they've got enough employees and enough systems that a lot of times those true process maps look like a spaghetti bowl. And so there's a lot of bottlenecks, there's a lot of rework loops. So let's clean that up and automate as much as we can. We've also helped a company in this space. It was a SaaS company, and we helped integrate some AI modeling into their product so that they had a more robust product. We can also engage an enterprise-sized company, and this is interesting because you would think an enterprise-sized company would already have the resources to build their own data team, and they do. But what we've run into is the data team is located in New York, and the Salt Lake office can't get any of their time. And so we've been able to come in and provide those data services for these enterprise-sized companies who just can't get access to their internal resources. So let me run through a few use cases just to give you an idea of what we've worked on. In the insurance world, there was a team of 40 claims officers, and so as soon as that fender bender happened, up until through the time that everything's repaired and paid off, that of course was a big bowl of spaghetti in terms of processes and roadblocks. And so we came in, and out of those 40 people, we were able to automate out the equivalent of 5 full-time employees. So that's a lot of automation, that's a lot of savings for that company. We've worked on several projects in the customer churn space. So, hey, once you have those customers, keep them longer. We can help you do that. We had a company that was doing $8 million in revenue, and they had a 45% churn rate, and we brought that down to 22%. And that's real dollars that can drop down to the bottom line. Another one, much larger, was $800 million. And we went in, and they had been stuck for years at a churn rate of 25%. And they just assumed, hey, we've done several internal projects to try and bring that down, but we just think we're kind of stuck at that. So we were able to go in and do a day-long audit of all of their processes and people involved with customer churn, from sales through onboarding, nurturing, support, and cancellation. And we were able to identify several areas where they could improve their processes, where they could change some techniques with their sales process and onboarding process. And we were able to say, hey, you could bring that churn rate down to 16%. And that's a significant savings. Again, $25 million over 5 years for this company. In healthcare, we worked with a SaaS company, and they were a software company that would go in and help automate and figure out what doctors, nurses, rooms, and equipment should be used to optimize the operations of a hospital. And we were able to add AI into that and make that and optimize that. Instead of having a nurse scheduling things, we could use the data and the past trends to say, hey, actually, this would be the best layout for this day and the next day, and et cetera. We're working with a logistics company, and they were originally making all of the light bulbs for warehouses. And they said, hey, what if we put in cameras in all of those light bulbs? Well, we were able to bring our data expertise and our AI modeling and say, hey, now that we have cameras and we can see the floor, we can now track pallets throughout the warehouse, so you won't have any more lost pallets. We can show you where those forklifts are, kind of create a heat map of those forklifts and predict traffic jams and say, hey, let's optimize the pathways for those forklifts. We were even able to track rats throughout the warehouse. So we were able to go in and optimize these transloading warehouses. We've also helped companies increase revenue through recommendation engines. So we used a machine learning algorithm to help customers. If a customer is coming from this demographic and they choose this product, well, make sure and offer them this product. My next slide is just to say that we do have a framework, and I kind of don't want to go into this with the community right now. I probably need feedback on the previous information, but just to say that we do have a method for working through each one of these data projects to make it quick and convenient for our customers to engage data projects. So this was just a couple more pictures of those lighthouses on the west coast of France. If you get a chance, maybe Google some of the pictures. They're really spectacular. And so the one here on the left is the Kereon lighthouse, and the one on the right is further up the coast, but they get really fantastic pictures from those. And this is actually the interior of the Kereon lighthouse. And if you get a chance, take a look at that online. It's really cool how they did it. They brought in exotic woods and real rich woods to really make that an incredible interior as well. So again, thank you to RevRoad. Thank you to the 1MC Provo community. And again, any help or thoughts you have on this message and how I can make it more clear and more compelling, I'd really appreciate it. But thank you for being here, and thanks to Jason, Amy, and Peyton for all of their support. Thanks.
Hi, Landon. Really quick question for you. Talk a little bit about, I heard you mention a company could bring in some of your people for a 2-week period, 2-month period. Is there some kind of a contract and a time frame that a corporation would need to hire the service that you provide, or is there a time box around the services?
That's a really good question. And Amy, what we would do normally is come in and kind of do a sit down and do an audit of, hey, who are the people involved in your company? that would be involved in this project, and what are their pain points, what are they facing, what kind of data is already there. And then from there, we're kind of able to make a roadmap and say, hey, looks like it would be a 3-week project. So we'll give a proposal at that point. But it's so interesting that as advanced as these technologies are, the starting point is always a sit down and face to face, and what's going on in your company, and why are you struggling, and how can we help? So that's how we start. But yeah, it's really, all of those projects really become customized, and so we can give a roadmap, and sometimes it is weeks, sometimes it's months, so we can give better visibility on that after a afternoon spent with your company.